The email arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line: Immediate organizational changes. I was in the middle of reviewing the Anderson merger documents when my phone buzzed. The message was 3 paragraphs long. Kenneth Marsh, our CEO, was transferring all my active projects to his son Trevor effective immediately. No explanation. No meeting. Just a cold corporate announcement that erased 5 years of my work in 3 sentences. I read it twice, closed my laptop and walked to the bathroom. My hands were steady as I washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled slightly. This was it. The moment I'd been quietly preparing for since I first noticed the pattern 6 months ago. Kenneth had finally made his move, and he had no idea what was coming. My name is Mia, and at 34 I'd built the entire strategic partnerships division at Marsh Industries from nothing. When I joined 5 years ago, the company had 12 clients and revenue of $8 million annually. Now we have 47 clients and revenue exceeding $60 million. Every major deal, every key relationship, every contract structure came through my hands. Kenneth used to joke that I was his secret weapon. He'd introduce me at industry events as the man who saved his company. That was before Trevor graduated business school and decided he wanted to play executive. Before Kenneth started forgetting who actually built what he was so proud of. Before family loyalty became more important than competence and results. 6 months earlier I'd noticed small changes. Kenneth stopped seeing Jimmy on strategic emails. Board meeting invites that used to include me suddenly didn't. Trevor started appearing at client dinners I'd arranged, introducing himself as head of partnerships. A title that didn't exist and certainly wasn't his. I didn't confront Kenneth. That's not how I operate. Instead, I started documenting everything. I made copies of every contract, every client agreement, every email chain that showed my work. I opened a separate secure cloud account and uploaded 5 years of documentation. Then I did something else. Something Kenneth would never expect from his loyal employee. I started building relationships that existed outside the company walls, relationships that would prove invaluable very soon. I'd started meeting with our largest clients privately. Not to badmouth the company, but to build personal relationships separate from Marsh Industries. I took Vincent Palmer from Anderson Corp to lunch and talked about industry trends. I played golf with Michelle Torres from Westfield Solutions. I attended the charity gala where Diane Fisher from Global Tech was honored. These weren't Marsh Industries events. These were my events, my relationships, my investments in a future I suspected was coming. Every client told me the same thing. They worked with Marsh Industries because they trusted me. Not the company name. Not Kenneth's reputation. Me. I documented those conversations too. Every single one went into my secure files, creating a paper trail that would prove crucial. The day after Kenneth's email, Trevor called a meeting with the entire partnerships team. 8 people who reported to me, who I'd hired and trained personally. Trevor stood at the head of the conference table wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was 26, fresh from business school, and had never closed a deal in his life. "Things are changing around here," he announced, not even looking at me. "My father built this company, and it's time we got back to basics. Real leadership. Real vision." The team sat in uncomfortable silence. Nobody made eye contact with me. I just smiled and took notes. Trevor continued talking about his plans, each idea more unrealistic than the last. I kept writing, documenting his promises for future reference. Trevor's first decision was to renegotiate the Anderson merger. The deal I'd spent 8 months structuring, worth $18 million. He claimed my terms were too favorable to Anderson, that I'd left money on the table. He scheduled a call with Vincent Palmer for that afternoon. I didn't argue. I didn't warn him. I just watched as he confidently dialed into the video conference. Vincent's face appeared on screen, professional but cold. Trevor launched into his pitch about restructuring terms. Vincent listened for exactly 90 seconds before interrupting. "I'm sorry, who are you again?" Trevor's confident smile faltered. "Trevor Marsh. Head of Strategic Partnerships. Vincent's expression didn't change. I don't work with you. I work with Mia. The silence that followed was beautiful. The call ended badly. Vincent refused to discuss any changes without me present. Trevor's face turned red as he hung up. He looked at me like it was my fault. What did you tell him? He demanded. Kept my voice calm. Nothing. I negotiated a fair deal. Vincent knows that. Trevor stood up, knocking his chair back. This is my division now. You'll do what I say, or you'll find somewhere else to work. I nodded slowly. Understood. That evening I received a text from Vincent. What's going on over there? Call me. I did. We talked for an hour. He wasn't the only one who reached out. By 9 p.m., I had messages from 6 major clients. Each one expressed concern about the transition and specifically about Trevor's approach to their accounts. Kenneth called me into his office the next morning. He looked tired, older than his 58 years. The office that used to feel welcoming now felt like enemy territory. Mia, I need you to make this transition smooth, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Trevor's learning. He needs your support. I kept my expression neutral. Of course. I'll help however I can. Kenneth seemed relieved. Good. I knew I could count on you. You understand this is business, right? Nothing personal. He nodded. Absolutely nothing personal. What Kenneth didn't understand was that I'd stopped taking any of this personally 6 months ago. This was pure strategy now. And his next move was predictable. He would continue enabling Trevor while expecting me to clean up the disasters. Trevor's second week brought more disasters. He tried to impress Kenneth by pursuing an aggressive expansion into the tech sector. He targeted a company called Innovate Systems, promising them partnership terms I knew were impossible to deliver. He signed a letter of intent without legal review, without financial analysis, without consulting anyone who actually understood our capabilities. The partnerships team tried to warn him. He dismissed their concerns as negativity. I stayed quiet and documented everything. The Innovate deal was going to collapse. It was just a matter of time. Meanwhile, I continued my own quiet preparation. I met with my attorney to discuss something I'd been researching for months. Something that would change everything when the moment was right. Kenneth had made a critical mistake 3 years ago. During a cash flow crisis, he'd needed emergency funding to avoid laying off staff. The banks wouldn't help, and he was desperate. I'd offered to invest my own money, $200,000 from my savings and inheritance. Kenneth was grateful. We structured it as a convertible note with specific terms. If the company hit certain revenue benchmarks, my loan would convert to equity. Kenneth had agreed readily, assuming the benchmarks were impossible. But we'd hit them 18 months ago. My attorney confirmed what I suspected. That convertible note meant I now owned 12% of Marsh Industries. Kenneth had apparently forgotten all about it. His oversight would prove costly. The paperwork was filed properly. Everything was legal and binding. The Innovate Systems deal collapsed exactly 3 weeks after Trevor signed the letter of intent. They discovered Trevor had promised technology integration capabilities we didn't have. Their CEO threatened legal action for misrepresentation. Kenneth had to personally intervene, offering concessions that cost the company nearly $500,000. The board was furious. I received a confidential call from Thomas Whitmore, the lead independent board member. He'd been growing concerned about Kenneth's judgment and Trevor's inexperience. Mia, some of us remember who actually runs partnerships around here, Thomas said carefully. If things continue this way, changes might be necessary. I listened but committed to nothing. My plan didn't require board intervention. Not yet anyway. I was building something bigger than a simple power play. Trevor blamed the Innovate failure on the partnerships team. Specifically, on Jessica Wu, one of my best analysts who tried to warn him about the technical impossibilities. He fired her in front of everyone during a team meeting. No warning, no HR process, just raw abuse of power. "You're done here," he told Jessica, his voice dripping with contempt. "Clear your desk." Jessica looked at me, tears forming. I kept my expression calm but made a mental note. That was a wrongful termination lawsuit waiting to happen. After Jessica left, I pulled Trevor aside privately. "That was a mistake," I said quietly. He laughed in my face. "What are you going to do about it? You're already on your way out." His arrogance was complete now. He truly believed he was untouchable. I wasn't on my way out. I was on my way up. But Trevor didn't need to know that yet. That evening I met with Jessica at a coffee shop downtown. She was devastated, worried about her career and her family. "I have a proposition," I told her. "Don't file for unemployment yet. Don't talk to other companies. Just wait 2 months. I'll cover your salary personally until then." Jessica looked confused. "Why would you do that?" Smiled. "Because in 2 months, there's going to be a different company. One that values people like you. Trust me." She agreed. Over the next week, I made similar offers to 3 other team members I knew Trevor was planning to fire. Each one accepted. They'd seen enough to trust my judgment over Trevor's chaos. The clients were growing restless. Michelle Torres from Westfield Solutions called Kenneth directly to complain about Trevor's handling of their account renewal. "I don't know this kid and I don't trust him," she told Kenneth bluntly. "Either Mia handles our account, or we're exploring other options." Kenneth tried to smooth things over, but Michelle was firm. She wanted me, not Trevor. Kenneth had no choice but to temporarily reassign the Westfield account back to me. Trevor was livid. "You're undermining me," he accused when he found out. I raised my hands innocently. "I'm just doing what the CEO asked. Take it up with your father." Trevor stormed out, but I could see the fear beginning to creep into his eyes. He was starting to realize that authority without respect means nothing. That's when I made my first overt move. I requested a formal board meeting to discuss the partnership division's performance and future strategy. Kenneth tried to refuse, but Thomas Whitmore supported my request. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Kenneth assumed I was going to complain about Trevor or possibly resign. He started preparing talking points about transition and fresh perspectives. Trevor walked around the office like he'd already won, telling people I was on my way out. What neither of them knew was that I'd spent the past week meeting individually with every board member. Not to complain, but to present facts. Revenue trends, client satisfaction scores, win rates before and after Trevor's involvement. The numbers told a devastating story. I also presented them with something else. Documentation of my convertible note and the equity it represented. Most board members had no idea I was a shareholder. Kenneth had never disclosed it properly. Thomas Whitmore was particularly interested when he saw the terms and realized Kenneth's oversight. "This changes the dynamic considerably," Thomas observed during our private meeting. "As a shareholder, you have rights Kenneth may have forgotten about." He nodded. "I'm not looking to cause problems. I just want what's best for the company I helped build." Thomas studied me carefully. "What exactly do you want, Mia?" Told him. His eyebrows rose, but he didn't say no. He said he'd think about it. Over the next few days, I received similar responses from 3 other board members. They were listening. The weekend before the board meeting, Kenneth finally realized he had a serious problem. He called me at home on Sunday afternoon. "Mia, we need to talk about this board presentation." His voice was strained. "What exactly are you planning to present?" I kept my tone professional. "Just the facts. Performance data, client feedback, strategic recommendations." Kenneth was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking. Maybe Trevor moved too fast. Maybe we can find a better structure. Co-heads of partnerships perhaps." I let the silence stretch. "Kenneth, I appreciate the offer. But I think the board needs to see the complete picture first. Then we can discuss organizational structure." He hung up shortly after, clearly worried. I'd given him a chance to fix this 6 months ago. That opportunity is gone now. The board meeting started at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Kenneth opened with his usual optimistic overview, minimizing recent problems and emphasizing long-term vision. Trevor presented next, confidently discussing his plans for the partnerships division. He had slides and projections that looked impressive if you didn't examine them closely. Then it was my turn. I stood up with my own presentation. It was devastating in its simplicity. Side-by-side comparisons of division performance before and after Trevor's involvement. Client retention rates that had dropped from 98% to 73%. Revenue projections that were now at risk. And testimonials from 5 major clients saying they'd leave if current management continued. I presented it all without emotion, letting the facts speak for themselves. The board members sat in uncomfortable silence as I finished. Kenneth's face had gone pale. Trevor looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find words. Then I presented my ownership documentation. The convertible note. The equity conversion that Kenneth had never properly processed. The fact that I was legally a 12% shareholder in Marsh Industries. As a shareholder, I said calmly, I'm concerned about the direction of this company. I'm also concerned about whether current leadership is acting in the best interests of all shareholders. Thomas Whitmore leaned forward. What are you proposing, Mia? Took a breath. This was the moment I'd been building toward for 6 months. I'm proposing a leadership change. For the good of the company and all stakeholders involved. Kenneth exploded. This is ridiculous. I built this company. You can't just walk in here and... Thomas cut him off. Kenneth, you violated securities regulations by failing to properly disclose Mia's ownership stake. You've also demonstrated poor judgment in recent operational decisions. He looked at the other board members. I think we need to discuss this privately. Kenneth and Trevor were asked to leave the boardroom. So was I. We sat in separate waiting areas for 90 minutes. Trevor kept glaring at me through the glass. Kenneth made phone calls, probably to his attorneys. I sat quietly and waited. Finally, Thomas emerged. His expression was neutral. Mia, can you come back in, please? I stood and walked back into the boardroom, knowing my life was about to change forever. The board had made their decision. Kenneth would step down as CEO effective immediately. He'd retain his shares and a seat on the board, but operational control was ending. Trevor would be terminated from all positions and barred from future employment with the company. And I would be promoted to CEO with full operational authority. The vote had been unanimous except for Kenneth's own vote. We're trusting you to prove this was the right decision, Thomas said seriously. We expect you to restore client confidence and division performance within 90 days. He nodded. You'll have my full commitment. Kenneth sat stone-faced as the terms were read. Trevor had already left the building. It was over. Just like that. 5 years of building, 6 months of careful planning, and 1 decisive board meeting. The next morning I walked into the CEO's office for the first time as the actual CEO. The space felt surreal. 5 years ago, I'd been a mid-level partnerships manager hoping to make a difference. Now I was running the entire company. My first action was calling an all-hands meeting. The staff gathered nervously, unsure what my leadership would mean. I know there's been chaos lately, I began. That ends today. We're going back to basics. Client service, integrity, and respect for every person in this company. I announced Jessica Wu and the others would be returning to their positions. I announced new protocols for decision-making and client management. I could see relief spreading through the room. People started asking questions, real questions about strategy and direction. Felt right. My second action was calling every major client personally. Vincent Palmer laughed when I told him the news. About time someone with sense took over, he said. The Anderson merger is back on original terms. Michelle Torres was equally supportive. Within 3 days, I'd secured written commitments from 42 of our 47 clients. The 5 who'd left during Trevor's brief reign received personal calls. 3 agreed to return. Kenneth called me once during that first week. I underestimated you, he admitted quietly. I thought loyalty meant accepting whatever I decided. I didn't gloat. You built something valuable, Kenneth. I'm just making sure it survives. We haven't spoken much since. He attends board meetings but stays quiet. Sometimes I catch him watching me, perhaps wondering where he went wrong. The first 90 days were intense. I restructured the partnerships division, bringing in 2 new senior managers to handle the expanded client base. I implemented new systems for project tracking and client communication. I personally handled the top 10 accounts, rebuilding trust that had eroded during Trevor's brief tenure. The team responded with energy I hadn't seen in months. Jessica Wu proved to be an exceptional VP of partnerships, exactly as I'd predicted. By day 60, our client retention was back to 94%. By day 90, we'd signed 3 new major accounts. The board meeting reviewing my first quarter was brief. Thomas Whitmore simply said, "Keep doing what you're doing." I intended to do exactly that. Trevor tried reaching out 2 months later. He was working at a small consulting firm and apparently struggling. His email was almost humble. I wasn't ready for that responsibility. I see that now. Any chance we could talk? I thought about it for a day, then replied, "Trevor, I hope you learn from this. Real leadership isn't about authority. It's about earning trust and respecting the people around you. Good luck in your career." I meant it. He was young and had time to grow. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. That wasn't my concern anymore. My concern was Marsh Industries and the people who'd believed in me when I was building something real. The people who'd trusted that competence matters more than family connections. 6 months into my tenure as CEO, I started thinking about expansion. Not the reckless kind Trevor had attempted, but strategic growth based on our strengths. I identified 2 smaller companies in complementary sectors that could benefit from our client relationships and operational expertise. I spent weeks analyzing the opportunities, running financial models, and consulting with the team. When I presented the acquisition strategy to the board, Kenneth spoke for the first time since his removal. "This is solid work, Mia. The kind of thinking we should have been doing all along." It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. Thomas approved the strategy unanimously. We closed the first acquisition 3 months later, adding 12 new clients and 15 employees. The second acquisition was more complex. The target company, Apex Consulting, had strong client relationships but weak operational systems. Their founder, Warren Blake, was 62 and looking to retire. During negotiations, Warren told me something interesting. "Kenneth approached me 5 years ago about selling," he said. "But he only wanted my client list. I didn't care about my people. I told him no deal." He nodded. "That's not how I operate. Your people are the most valuable part of what you've built. Every single person comes with the company, with equivalent or better positions." Warren smiled. "That's why I'm selling to you and not to one of the other 3 offers I've received." We shook hands on terms that were fair to everyone. A year later, Marsh Industries hit $100 million in revenue. We'd doubled our client base and expanded into 3 new sectors. The board approved a retention bonus that included additional equity, bringing my ownership to 18%. I kept Kenneth's name on the company. He'd earned that much, even if he'd lost his way at the end. Sometimes I think about that email from him, the one that transferred my projects to Trevor. At the time it felt like betrayal. Now I see it as the push I needed to stop being comfortable and start being strategic. Kenneth wanted to hand his company to his son. Instead, he handed it to someone who actually knew how to run it. I didn't take the company from him. Earned it. There's a difference that matters. The team that Trevor had demoralized became the strongest division in the company. Jessica Wu's innovative approach to client management became our model across all departments. The people I'd hired and trained became senior leaders themselves, each one embodying the values I'd tried to instill from the beginning. We implemented a formal mentorship program, ensuring that junior employees had the support and guidance I'd given them. The culture shifted from top-down authority to collaborative excellence. Decisions were made based on data and expertise, not hierarchy. It took time, but eventually Marsh Industries became the kind of company I'd always believed it could be. The kind of place where talent and hard work mattered more than connections. Kenneth and I developed an unexpected relationship over that second year. Not quite friendship, but mutual respect. He'd occasionally ask to lunch, where we'd discuss industry trends and company strategy. "I see what you're building here," he told me during one of these meetings. "It's better than what I had." I was so focused on legacy, on passing something to Trevor, that I forgot the company itself was the legacy. I appreciated his honesty. "You gave me the foundation," I replied. "I'm just building on what you started." He shook his head. "No, you're building something new. Something better." I'm glad the board saw it. These conversations helped me understand Kenneth's perspective, even if I couldn't excuse his decisions. Trevor's path took an interesting turn. His small consulting firm failed within a year, but the failure seemed to change him. He took a junior position at a mid-sized company, working his way up through actual performance rather than family connections. 2 years after his termination from Marsh Industries, he called me, not to ask for anything, just to talk. "I was an arrogant kid who thought a degree meant I knew everything," he admitted. "Watching you succeed with the company taught me more than business school ever did." We met for coffee. Trevor was different now, humbler, more thoughtful. He asked questions about leadership and strategy, genuinely trying to learn. I gave him what advice I could. Success, I told him, comes from serving others first. By year 3, Marsh Industries had become a case study in leadership transition and strategic turnaround. Business schools wanted to analyze our transformation. Industry publications wrote features about our growth. I declined most interview requests, preferring to let our results speak for themselves. But I did agree to speak at one event, a leadership conference for young professionals. I told them about preparation, about building relationships that matter, about the difference between authority and respect. "The moment you think your position makes you important," I said, "you've already lost. What makes you important is the value you create for others." Several people in the audience told me afterward that those words changed their perspective completely. The partnerships division continued to innovate. We developed a proprietary client management system that other companies started asking about. That became a new revenue stream, licensing our technology and methodology to non-competing firms. Jessica Wu led that initiative, turning it into a $5 million business within 18 months. The team I'd once managed now included 42 people across 6 offices. Each office maintained the culture of excellence and respect we'd established. New employees were carefully vetted not just for skills, but for alignment with our values. We turned down talented people who showed signs of arrogance or entitlement. Culture, I'd learned, matters more than individual brilliance. A team of good people working together beats a collection of brilliant people working against each other. Kenneth passed away in year 4. It was sudden, a heart attack during his morning run. Despite everything, I felt genuine grief. He'd been flawed, had made terrible decisions near the end, but he'd also given me my first real opportunity. I spoke at his funeral, talking about the man who'd built something from nothing, who'd believed in investing in people, who'd created opportunities for dozens of employees over 3 decades. Trevor spoke too, with more grace than I'd expected. "My father's greatest achievement," he said, "wasn't building the company. It was recognizing when someone better could take it further." After the service, Trevor and I stood together for a moment. "Thank you for what you said," he told me. "You didn't have to be generous." 5 years after taking over as CEO, I stood before the board to present our annual results. Revenue had reached $180 million. We employed 215 people across 9 offices in 6 states. Our client retention rate was 97%, among the highest in the industry. Most importantly, our employee satisfaction scores had climbed from 62% in Trevor's brief reign to 91% now. Thomas Whitmore, still the lead board member, smiled as I finished. "Mia, when we made the decision to promote you 5 years ago, some people thought we were taking a significant risk. You've proven that the real risk would have been not promoting you. The board approved a new equity grant that brought my ownership to 24%. That evening, I sat in my office after everyone had gone home. On my wall hung that original email from Kenneth, the one that had started everything. I'd framed it as a reminder of how quickly things can change and how important preparation is. Next to it hung a photo of the current leadership team, 42 people who'd helped build something remarkable. Below that was a handwritten note from a client thanking us for our integrity and service. These 3 items told the complete story. Betrayal that pushed me to action, people who believed in a better way, and results that proved competence matters more than connections. I'd started as a partnerships manager hoping to make a difference. Now I was leading a company that made differences in people's lives every day.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy watching Karma, Payback, come full circle every week, we dive into tales of betrayal and poetic justice. Don't miss the next one. Tap the subscribe button and join the Revenge Squad.